Alright, I'm gonna call to order the April 14th, 2026 Canterbury Planning Board meeting at 7 PM. First item on the agenda is approval of the March 31st, 2026 draft meeting minutes. And Josh, did you have suggested changes to those, or?
I'm not sure it's worth doing. I went through I know I sent you all this email. I went through the last few minutes of the last meeting. I did this afternoon because I thought everyone came up with such great ideas, and I thought the minutes didn't sufficiently, at least for my purposes, didn't sufficiently summarize them, but it didn't go into the details, and I really wanted the details. I don't know if it matters that they go in the minutes, but I only made 3 copies, but I did sort of.
Sure, okay, so good to not change the minutes, but to
Yeah.
have this available as we're going through our discussion, so this
Yeah,
is
that's
very
really made for
Thank you.
myself, but I'm happy to. No, I'm happy to.
So I'll move the minutes.
Alright, so we have a motion to move the minutes as written, is there a second?
Second.
Alright, any discussion on the minutes before we move on?
I have no discussion on the minutes.
Okay, all in favor of the March 31st minutes as written?
Aye.
All opposed? Any minutes carried? Alright, it feels really good to have a meeting that is primarily just a work session and not packed with hearings and 10-year plan, etc. So this is pretty exciting. First up, before I get there though,
We'll have to do 10-year plan for another year.
I'm counting it as 10-year from, so we'll see if we pick up a chapter. There is a all land boards meeting April 23rd at 7 PM. Do you know who's hosting that? Is that the selectmen?
What day of the week is that?
Today's the 14th, so -1 is gonna be
Is that
Tuesday.
like right to know stuff, is that what that's for?
No,
Um,
that's in May, the right to know
I
thing.
think last year they did a tiny bit about right to know, a bunch about the code of conduct. Unless I'm getting confused with just a select board meeting where they asked heads to come.
Yeah, I think this one's gonna be more geared towards getting all the land use boards on the same page, trying to figure out.
Communicating, so we actually know what the meeting is about, yeah.
Is that,
It was in one of the emails.
is that information in my email somewhere, or should I just ask you to repeat it?
April 23rd, 7 PM.
And that's here.
It is?
I'm asking.
I'm getting a nod from Cheryl that yes, it is here.
Yes.
Okay,
And that's a Thursday, in case anyone else was confused about what day of the week anything.
Thursday.
wait, how is it?
I
The
can't.
23rd
Thursday.
is a Thursday?
Oh, I was thinking, I'm bad at math. I gotcha, it is a Thursday.
I have another commitment.
I can't promise
Okay.
anything about my math skills, I rely on the robot brain.
I think it's not a mandatory attendance, it's if you can make it, it would be great to see you, so. Okay. Cluster ordinance work session.
Can I do a short new business before we get to that?
Sure.
My information on the roster that went around is wrong. So I've communicated to the secretary and hopefully that'll get fixed, but it's just wrong. So don't.
Is
I haven't
this,
seen a new roster, so I guess that's good.
this is the old ones,
That's wrong too.
this is the old ones wrong too, okay. Do you mind for my benefit writing the correct information?
Burn yourself.
My name is spelled with 2 O's, so that's the problem there.
I was just looking at the cell number. Got it, thank you. I will try to get the 2 changes.
No, your name is wrong.
So it's Gordon, Gordon, and then in the
The
email
email
address,
address,
his
same thing.
name is in the email address, so
Gotcha.
we'll replace that.
Okay, perfect.
Alright, thanks Josh. Any other new business before we go to cluster ordinance? Okay. Oh, I was gonna say before the minutes, I think Megan has an interview and that's scheduled to go till 30 after, so if we're still going, she may.
Okay.
For the cluster ordinance, so before we even get to the cluster ordinance, one of the things that I've been thinking about is that other towns in their subdivision regulations have like two basic sentences that actually gives them what, depending on the size and scope of a project, with a lot of discretion. One is, and I'm blanking, I didn't pull an example, but something like the subdivision is not gonna have an adverse impact based on traffic and just like loops a bunch of the normal public health and safety things. Similar to the variance criteria, but that gives a little bit where if someone comes in for a 50-unit subdivision with water park and crazy businesses, that you have something to kind of hang your hat on. And the second, I recall that I did a case a long time ago and had an ordinance for the town of Plymouth that part of their subdivision regulations, it was called preservation of existing features. And it said the planning board, and the language from the regulations was, may impose requirements on the subdivider in order to preserve and protect the existing features, trees, scenic points, views, brooks, rock outcroppings, water bodies, stone walls, boundary markers, other natural resources, and historic landmarks. And what that did for that town in that case was that someone wanted to divide, and it was like a monstrously big parcel, but they wanted to put the driveway through a bunch of wetland and wetland setback areas when there were some alternatives that they couldn't divide the property exactly the way they wanted, but they could either, swap land in two places, put a driveway that doesn't go right through wetlands, or do an easement so that the driveway went around. I don't know that we would be able to do that if we had someone come in right now and they were hard up and they, met all the dimensional requirements. And if we had something like that, just for all subdivisions, we can potentially have a little more discretion to say, we think the lot lines should be in different places where you're proposing to impact a wetland or wetland setback, or to go through a rock wall or something along those lines.
And that's just the subdivision regulations, we can just adopt it.
Yes, so we would just have to come up with the exact language, notice a meeting, have a public hearing, and then we can adopt it, and that gives those versions of those two things would give us some flexibility, and that would also end up applying to a cluster subdivision, which has to apply to a normal subdivision. It's also important because if we get to a point where someone decides they want a traditional subdivision because they don't like our cluster, we also still have more in the ordinance that allows us to have them come to the table, maybe take 10% of the units off, like get some compromise and back and forth, as opposed to them being able to come and say, well, take it or leave it, we meet the minimum and you don't really have any discretion and you're stuck with it.
And the Supreme Court approved that language in Plymouth?
It did, and I'll have to check, it might be that we wanna tweak it to be a little stronger, but I think some of the arguments were about preemption with wetland regulation and some other things.
So is that just a sense of the board that we wanna move forward on?
So I just wanted to flag those two, and then what I'll do is, as we talk through the rest of the cluster stuff, I'm hoping to sort of collect ideas tonight and then come back with sort of an example draft language to orient the discussion next time, if that makes sense. And I wanna flag those, cause I think I'll have two of those that we can kind of think about as just high level, do we wanna add them to our regulations no matter what? Okay. In terms of the actual ordinance, just high level, we talked about is defining base density. So if we wanna make it if we end up, we're gonna want it to be clear so we don't have disagreements in the future, so if it's.
Are you talking about the number that
Just like-
that we approved?
Yeah, how do you calculate the actual baseline density, and we can fix that up as we go as part of this. So to catch you up, Janice, part of the question was, the ordinance said something to the effect of, at the time, your baseline density was, and it cited to 5.2. And 5.2 has minimum lot size standards. And there's minimum lot acreage, lot depth, lot width,
Frontage,
and frontage, lot width, or am I just missing it? Either way, there's basically you need frontage, you need the Canterbury rectangle to fit inside your unit, and you need enough acreage. And it was not clear, I think, one way or the other, whether the intent of the cluster subdivision was you take your total acreage and then you just basically divide it by the minimum acreage per lot, or if you were expected to lay out a traditional subdivision complete with, for example, roadway, lots, all of them having a rectangle, and that determines your baseline density, and then you scrap the.
So wait, what I'm thinking about is,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I read somewhere, don't ask me where, it might have been someplace else, no, it was here. That it was 50%.
So we
On the
changed
cluster.
it to 50% as a placeholder for us to have this discussion.
Right, we
Last
voted
year-
on that a couple weeks ago.
Yes, and I was,
Yeah.
and to that point, I was wondering how you just do that without, just.
Yeah,
But last year it was 100%, but the question that we had was, does the ordinance require them to show how many lots they could fit in a traditional subdivision with the actual, right, cause lots are irregular and how do they lay it out? Or are we just looking at if you have 25 acres, 1 acre lots, that's 25 units, and it doesn't matter if you can show them on a plan? And so we can clear that up.
Yeah.
I have a
This one.
complication on that number. When I absorbed enough economics when Lisa got her PhD to recognize that that is a complicated number. And to really arrive at the right number, like if the number's 100%, say,
Yeah.
whatever, it's gonna have a lot different outcomes than if that number is 0%. And, we picked 50 because it's right in the middle. But, adjusting that number this way or that way, what's the right number and what are we trying to accomplish? That's like a really complicated question with a whole lot of variables.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit concerned about, we're obviously not gonna hire an economist to do all that. And picking that number, essentially out of a hat, it seems like arbitrary. And I don't think I'm worried about it legally so much being arbitrary, more that it's just arbitrary and we don't know what its effect is going to be really. So what excited me about our meeting last week and why I made this list was you guys, as far as I was concerned, really thinking outside of the box that I had put myself into, which was just how to adjust that number.
Right.
And there's all these other ways that don't require picking an arbitrary number that seem much more effective. And so, if possible, we abandon trying to come up with the right number for that and do it in all these other ways. Or adjust the cluster
so
subdivision in these other ways.
On that point, when I'm reintroducing the baseline density piece, I actually care less about the starting percentage, more about how we calculate the rest of it. So take that original question that we had last year. Do we want them to lay out an entire plan and that's their baseline density? Or and adjust it by any percentage, and we can talk about that piece, or do we want to just say it's the total acreage divided by the minimum lot acreage for that zone? And maybe if you get complicated, if it's in 2 zones, it's whatever part for each part. And then multiply it by some percent, and we can figure that piece out. In terms of the bonuses, I think what I'm hoping will end up happening is when we find actual bonuses that we think the residents will care about, that we give those things sort of an automatic bonus density. So no discretion. If you put in 50% open space, let's say you start 50%, you increase that 50% by 40%, so effectively that gets you to 70%. And if you put in architectural styles and you've got 10% of your units or whatever that are, let's say 1,500 square feet or less, and we can talk about all those, then if you do a few of the things that we want you to do, you get back pretty near to 100%. without having to lay out a traditional subdivision. Doing all the things we want in the way that people, instead of coming for additional subdivision, they're gonna say, as long as we do these things and we have a couple smaller homes and we have open space and we have architecture and we have community planning like playgrounds, sidewalks, those kind of things, they get all the stuff they want and they can sell the units they want. And all the developments look exactly the way or have the features that we want them to have.
It seems to me that the dimensional standards that we have are designed to deal with a lot of the variables that a given parcel has. The amount of wetland, how you would lay out a road, all the different things that are, that could make, it could be that you can divide by 5 acres and get it, but there are a lot of other, ledges and steep slopes and things. It's trying to take those things into account in a more holistic overview rather than just
Right, I tend to think that there's probably very few parcels in Canterbury with Canterbury's geography where you could actually get 100%.
right.
If you were doing a traditional subdivision. And so even giving a few sort of fixed criteria, a few that it has to be a little more discretionary, like community planning, where you don't really know it until you see it. That you get them pretty close to what 100% would be if they didn't have any of those issues, that everyone is going to want, when they develop and they want a large subdivision, they're gonna wanna do a cluster, they're gonna preserve open space, they're gonna have a few units that are smaller, they're gonna try to put in sidewalks and other community planning and
Right, but
all of
it's
sort of
where,
the concerns that we talked about get baked in.
it's where the starting point number is that Joshua did, we're all trying to
Well,
figure out.
so I was just saying, so as an example, if you say, calculate it just looking at acreage, and you call it 50%, and then you give the other 50% in bonuses,
Is that,
then it doesn't really matter what your starting point was, you could go down to 40 and give larger bonuses, but whatever the combination of base plus bonus just gets you back to that starting acreage.
but there are lots that are 80% wet.
So is
There
that, is that
could.
what you're trying to say, Greg, is like if you've got 100 acres and only 40% of it's buildable, are you saying that you only get 50% of the 40% to start? I think that's what Greg's trying to
So
say.
yeah, and so I think
I
one
think
piece,
that's how
I
it
already wrote
works.
it down, that for the open space piece as an example, that we should keep and maybe expand upon it is what percentage of open space can be steep slope wetlands or wetland setback now, so we still keep that component.
Yeah, but that's
or
not
we
dealing
expand it.
with the issue of one lot can be 80% wetland and one lot can be 20% wetland, right?
Well, if one lot's 80% wetland, they're really never gonna meet the open space requirement, and if that's our biggest bonus, the one that's the most visible to people and probably most care about, then they're not gonna be able to get a lot of lots with a traditional subdivision because it's 80% wetland, and they're not gonna be able to get a lot with a cluster because they're never gonna be able to meet that open space requirement.
I see what you're saying, but I think,
But if I just step back for a second, we can kind of figure out the number and give some examples once we get past this part.
so if you've got 100 acres and 80% is wet. If you start with,
But you only have 20 buildable acres then.
Well, but you could have 2-acre lots where you put, each one has depending on how it's configured, each one could be 80% wetland and you still have a house envelope that's outside. So it's not
Right, right.
it's why it gets really complicated, but if you have a lot that's 80% wetland, you're never gonna get 50% open space, of which 20% is not wetlands and steep slopes. So then they're stuck with, well, maybe I can cluster and get some bonus for small houses, but if you're starting at 50, like a lot lower anyway, you cluster in one part, and the wetland ends up getting preserved, not for a bonus, but because they can't do anything with it.
My, like, general inclination is that we make, like, the process of people figuring out if cluster is a viable option for them as simple and straightforward as possible. Because people aren't gonna really want to, like, do the work of figuring out, like, the exact amount of area and exact amount of lots that, like, might hypothetically fit in, only to, like, turn around and do, like,
They're gonna do that anyway, if, how do you decide? A developer is gonna do that to figure out which is the best choice for them.
Yeah, probably.
If there's a big enough development, they probably will, like if it's a company that has Meridian or a similar company, they'll say, how do we get the maximum units? I'm hopeful that once and so today we'll maybe step back from that and just talk, what are the things we actually want to see in a cluster? I'll come up with some ideas and math for next week and circulate it ahead of time, and we can just think through some scenarios and see is this the kind of thing that would actually incentivize the development,
What it would look like, yeah.
that people would be happier with in town as opposed to someone dropping a traditional subdivision.
I don't know if this is gonna affect your thoughts in any way, but I think the idea that there's not that many lots in Canterbury that don't have wetlands and steep slopes, I think that's by and large true, but I think the most vulnerable places are ones that are almost devoid of that problem, you know, I'm thinking of the Ciano's land, and it's not steep and it's not wet. I haven't been over there a lot, but I think the Glines is like that, and I think it's a lot of, and probably all your land, I mean, I know it's all in conservation, but it's, the agricultural land, the old, back in the day, are all the wonderful
Yeah, I
places
mean,
that don't have that problem.
There's probably gotta be enough incentives where if everything goes perfectly and they do everything we want and they have a lot where you can maximize it, that they get 110% or something. Where it's a little bit more, but they're still doing it in a way where they're clustering so you don't have it all spread out. They're preserving the open space, they're having a percentage workforce, they're having community features. If they do all of that, we're probably still happier, even though they're slightly above the maximum on that particular lot. So, anyway, just something to sort of consider in the back as we talk through.
Can I ask a question?
Go for it, we're not hearing, so you feel
Am
free.
I on the agenda?
You are not on the agenda.
Well, the meeting you had about wetland setback, I don't know if that was your last one or one before, I was told to be here tonight.
Let's
About my
see.
request for the change of property, exit 18 to commercial.
So March 31st, we had a pre-conceptual for 22 Aberton. And I don't know if I have the March 17th one.
We did have a meeting in the last month or so that somebody didn't show up for, so I'm wondering.
Well, it was to do with the property, a lot up on Baptist Road between, Lenny Manowski and the town building. I was asked to come to that meeting, I don't know. if
Yeah, I think that's Aberton.
That was the one from March 17th.
Does that help you?
Oops, it was not the one from, yeah, I think that's the Aberton, the one where there's a portion of town-owned property that's right next to it and, we don't have that.
Cemetery property abuts that, and there's also conservation easement property that abuts that.
So,
I think it's,
Gina
Booth that wanted to do something. Anyway, I was talking to you for sure, yeah, about property I've got at exit 18 that I want changed to commercial.
I remember this conversation, I don't remember anyone saying to come back here on a specific date, I'm not saying that didn't happen, I'm just saying I don't remember it.
Well, somebody said show up at the next meeting and we can get it done. as far as putting it on the,
I'm sure nobody said we can get it done.
that's true.
Alright, so I apologize, you're not on the agenda right now. If you give me your contact information, I can reach out to Michelle and have her contact you to get more information. I think Thursdays, she's normally there the whole day, and determine if you need a preconceptual or something to talk about. What it would take, if I'm hearing it right though, if it's a zoning change, like spot zoning to adjust the zoning of your parcel.
Well, do we need to have him on the agenda to give him a preconceptual now and go into this? So this gentleman doesn't have to show up?
It was, I don't know what year, but, and it was Hildreth that owned it before me. Was put in as a warrant article that excluding what's under easement would become commercial. And when Snyder was the chair here, he was going to check into about it. Well, he got back to me and said that wasn't the intent. When all the time it got voted down. So he didn't check anything, he just come up with a reason to pull me off.
But that's 10 years ago or something.
Oh, yeah,
So,
yes, but
At least,
and I wanna do the same, I wanted this area changed because it's not under easement. And it got put in as a warrant article and the township voted it down, which I didn't know. I thought it was a done deal. And then previous to the last meeting, I can't think of the name, come in with the wording that it had voted down by the town. I wanna bring it back
Oh.
and try to have it commercial down there.
Okay.
So you
Is
wanna
that-
change the zone?
even a
Yeah.
planning board matter?
Well,
Well, that takes a
we
vote
can
of the town.
propose
well, warrant
zoning
article.
district changes, but also there's a citizen petition process, but either way, we
Sure.
can.
You need like
I'll-
25.
If you don't mind giving me your contact information, I'll
Not at all.
have Michelle talk to you and we can
Not at all.
put it on.
Trying to figure it out.
And, ooh, I'm writing on this.
You're in Cochran?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I believe it was you that said somebody warned us I was coming in. Somebody warned you that I was
I don't
coming in.
remember that, but okay.
And that's fine,
Yeah,
you should be warned when I show up.
How large a parcel is this?
yeah.
It's 76 acres total.
And where is it?
Other side of the highway.
The other side.
It's on the west side of the highway.
Yeah, right across from the town's property.
So is it north or south of West Road? On the other side of the highway?
It's on the south side.
South side, there's a house there now.
Yes, that's my
That's
rental
your
house.
Do you mind,
Run it off.
phone email? Thank you.
Do you have an idea of what sort of commercial development you hope to establish? there?
I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
It's for future generations that, I'm too old, you know.
Probably.
I tried to buy land across the town, across from the road from the town, they wouldn't sell it to me. Don't ask me why. I wanted to buy land and put it in self-storage. They don't want this in this town.
Hand that to Cheryl, please.
Thank you.
And I appreciate it, thank you. Just watch that.
Yeah.
Is it ag zone now?
I think it's,
Steve, what's current zone?
It's ag.
it's industrial on the north side of West Road. And on the south side, it's ag conservation. And you want one of this lot right here. Well, some of it's already commercial, this little spigot, but you want more of.
Yeah, my house lot down there is commercial. And I got 17 acres that's not under easement that,
You said, so 17 is not under easement, is that what
Yes.
you're saying?
yes.
So you're,
And like I say, if I could get it commercial, it's in a trust, so my granddaughter's son someday they wanna do something, or they can just not do something.
Alright, thank you.
Somebody
So, Michelle will reach out to you, so
Great.
give her that. Thank you.
Look at the sunset.
Oh, wow. That's gorgeous.
Wow.
Alright, in terms of some of the bonuses we talked about, and I'll call them bonuses for now, but I should just say features of a cluster that,
Incentives
We want.
maybe.
I assume 50% open space. We could potentially do, like, split that in half. 25% open space gets you X, 50% gets you Y, and so that gives a little bit more flexibility where maybe there's some parcels where they have too much wetland and steep slope, but they can muster up 25 and they're still preserving
That's
some.
an interesting idea.
Is there interest in doing one? I was trying to think of how you define it to give them a bonus where the bonus units have to be more affordable or workforce or easier access for older, and the only thing that seems to come to mind is using square footage, because it's kind of
Well, it
hard.
could be percentage of the median house price, you know, the state's median house price, which is, you know, $500,000 now, it could be, you know, half that or
Well,
70% of that or something.
the problem I see with that is that we don't,
No.
you don't know until
And there's no
afterwards
way
when they go to
knowing if it's
sell.
gonna change, between
Right.
when we approve a development and when they actually have the houses built and sold.
Whereas thinking if we look at square footage and we find the right number and you kind of look at for new construction, what are they typically building?
What is the current,
And I think a lot of that's
statute
like,
and ordinance define workforce? That seems like it would be the same problem.
I think it's
It's an affordability standard.
it's a percentage of median income.
Percentage of median.
What about, like the
Hard to calculate.
spruces, how big are the spruces units?
Small.
Those are probably 9 to 1,400 square feet.
Really, they're
They're small.
Yeah, they're very small. I think if we're looking at things that are feasible for older people, really, like, I mean, yes, affordability is a consideration, but also accessibility is a significant consideration, and like that probably more than a straight up affordability
Right.
measure would define what's feasible for
And that
affordable
one-
housing.
you can fix with single floor
Right.
housing.
Yeah, like 1,800 square foot ranches are actually really popular for 55 and older. That's
Yeah,
like the
that makes
sweet
sense.
spot for
It's-
square
it is,
footage.
yeah.
Because,
Usually it's 1 or 2 people living there,
Yeah.
it gives you a guest bedroom, a nice living room, a good master, and if you want, you can finish the basement. A lot of people, when they move to those, grandkids are visiting, or they don't need 3 bedrooms, they just want a place to sit down, eat a meal,
right,
go to sleep. Nice porch, like you can make them
Yeah.
relatively affordable too, under the 450 range. So they're not
and how many square feet?
about 1,800.
So.
I mean, 1,800 square feet is bigger than my house,
Yeah.
Right, but the key on those is that primarily it's one floor.
single level.
Um,
Yeah, it's single
that's
level,
something
wide
that's
doors,
simple
buttons.
enough that we can look at
ADA
plans and
compliant,
styles.
right?
And
ADA
that
compliance.
the town knows that they can enforce it, where you say you're gonna have 3 units that are single
Most
floor.
people wouldn't want their house to be fully ADA compliant.
Yeah,
but like,
careful with that, cause it looks terrible.
Hey, my house is ADA, you would never even know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
You can blend them really well now.
Yeah.
It's not like the old school, everything is stainless steel grab bars
My
everywhere.
house cannot pronounce ADA, so,
Well, it's 200 years old.
Yeah.
but just sort of think through that, I think square footage and single floor are the only ones that jump out to me where they're really conceptually easy to see and to have the town enforce in terms of building permits. Whereas dollars and
Yeah,
money-based
you know,
requirements are
a 1,000
harder.
square foot house with, granite countertops and gold plated.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if that's gonna be 450.
Oh, they're not, but your base model is. But then if you get that same model and you say, hey, we're gonna put this in, now you can sell them for $750 and get your marble countertops that you
Right.
need. I
So
mean, it's,
that's part of the problem, is that
Yeah.
resell is hard really to control anyway. But if they just end up being smaller, they should sell for, they're still gonna sell for an inordinate amount, and I think there's probably no going back on some of that, but they will still sell for, I imagine, less than the unit they built
Yeah.
that's 2,600 square
Because
feet.
people who want, you know, marble countertops and gold plated faucets also want 4,000 square feet.
Right, or they
Well-
buy the 1,200 square feet and they renovate it.
Could there be an incentive for the whole cluster to be between 1,600 and 1,800 square feet? Would you be more prone to giving more homes, because then it would potentially push a 55 and older or a affordability standard?
That's an interesting,
Yeah,
Like if you
Consideration.
say you're allotted 20, but you do them all 1,600 square feet, we'll give you a 50% bonus,
yeah.
you know, or something like that, like.
Yeah, we could do that too.
I don't
There
hate
is-
that idea.
Yeah, I disagree that going on a percentage of, or I'm thinking I disagree that going on a percentage of median home price or something wouldn't work. I'm thinking, you know, when Meridian was sitting here, if we were able to, if we had something like this, we were able to say, can you commit that certain number of houses were, you know, 3/4 or 60% or something of the median house price, and they would, you know, they'd go back and scratch their heads and come back and say, well, if we do X, Y, and Z, I think we can comply with that. We don't have to do that work, the
Yeah.
developers, and like you said, most of these developers that are doing any of this are gonna be sophisticated enough, it's not gonna be, you know, Jim Snyder with his, you know, one lot subdivision, it's gonna be,
Don't let him know he's in the minutes.
we can pick on
He
it.
might read the minutes, you should be careful.
It's, you know, a sophisticated, like they had at Exit 18.
I'm just thinking, like, because, you know, I have a love-hate relationship with being the devil's advocate, like, people are going, okay, like, I have to have, you know, X number of them sell for, like, Y price, but, like, I'm gonna build the nice ones first and sell those first, and then maybe I won't ever get around to building the cheap ones.
And sometimes they go out of business
And
and
they, yeah, or that kind of thing, so
when
like,
you tie their hands on what they can sell it for.
It's all about that cash flow.
and of course, the
Yeah.
longer they wait to sell it, like, the more the housing prices are gonna
Right,
change
right. So-
between when they agree to it and when they do it, and like, like, I see the point, but also like, I'm seeing a lot of practical issues with it actually happening.
And there's sort of a limit to how much we control too, like, down the road, someone who buys that 1,200 square foot house could, if
Put
they've
in
got
more
room and they
faucets.
hit the setbacks, they can
Put their
build an
ADU.
addition.
Put the
Yeah.
second
Now,
floor
if
up.
they're clustered and they're really trying to maximize the open space, they may not be able to meet setbacks to actually get big additions, but
I think they
you know,
can't, but they could go
there's
up.
there's a level down the road that we just can't control in terms of resale
Right, and making a
I
nightmare
could
for
gold
town
plate my entire
administration.
house and
Right.
sell it for, you know, whatever a
Did you
gold
see
plated
that?
house would sell for.
There was an article in one of the newspapers in the last month or two, some suburb in, I don't know, Virginia or Maryland, I think, where, you know, it's just old, you know, sort of 1960s tract housing with, you know, I don't know, it seems like there were 1,500 or 2,000 square foot houses, you know, decent size, and it's just one after the other on quarter or third acre lots, and one family wanted to, and they built just 5 stories up in the same footprint, and it's like, you know, so the houses 2, 3 down have, you know, shadow problems, and it's like totally out of character for the neighborhood.
And that's why you need a height ordinance.
But, well, I mean, they comply with all that, but the neighbors are like, you know, this is not what our neighborhood's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And so if, I don't know where I was going with that, but
Yeah,
There's
so all I'm
only so
saying
much
is,
control the planning board
don't,
has, yes.
don't stress that we can't control everything.
yeah.
But I'm hoping it's an easy enough standard that it's easy to apply, it's easy to see when we get applications, and it's easy for the town to enforce. So that's, in my head, easy means square foot or stories where we can like see it.
I think we should
Pretty easy
like
to
keep a
find.
post-it note on Calvin's idea of like, what if we do the whole development with like smaller, more affordable or whatever houses?
So
Is there an additional bonus there? Cause I think that's got some merit.
if we do something like that, which we can, there's federal regulation for 55 plus and is it 70 or 72? But there's 2 categories. And there's sort of who can live in there, and 70 gets really restrictive and 55 is less restrictive. But if you allow a development like that, you can give them more, because it helps that you know they're also not gonna contribute to the school tax base.
That's a good point.
Well, that's a bad thing.
Well,
Well, they contribute, but they're not putting kids in your school.
sorry,
Well, but you want the kids in school to maintain the viability of the school.
if you're building things for older
They'll be gone in
people,
6 months anyways.
it happens one way or the other, that at least, if
Right.
that's your goal and you wanna incentivize it, it ensures that it continues to be available as best you can within those two regulatory schemes.
Well, or even if they don't make it 55 and up, like if they make a whole neighborhood basically of relatively affordable starter homes, that also has its own merits.
Mhm.
That could be a really nice
We've
little
also
quarter
had
mile.
numerous discussions about trying to have mixed neighborhoods where you can have old people and young people. And there's a definite attraction to that, I feel.
Yeah, and that's what a general affordable space could do.
But now your idea so 50% open space, you get some bonus, 25% you get less bonus. So you could have a similar thing you have 10% ADA, single family you have 20%, you get a little bit more.
For that particular requirement, I love the idea of saying, you get 20% of your houses to get you to whatever your number is. That bonus, the houses that constitute that bonus are the ones you build, so as an addition, if you're only able to put in 16 homes, but we'll give you an extra 2 homes if those 2 homes are small and more likely to be affordable. And so then it's a proportion of each development, so you end up with variation in the community. And the incentive there, they should almost always take that if they can get 2 extra lots, if they can build some smaller homes.
And what's
That
stopping
then
from
is the
doing-
financial incentive, where they never have a financial incentive to put in smaller, your bonus
Yeah, I see
is
what you're
those
saying
smaller
there.
homes.
Yeah, they're still not gonna build them if they don't feel like they're gonna be profitable to build them, so,
But I mean,
What's your
they may
incentive?
build a smaller one and charge whatever they charge, but then it's at least in the housing inventory and out there, and there's some homes that aren't quite as big.
are any of us friends with the developer? Cause I feel like it would be really useful to have a not actually directly interested in this immediately developer person, in some of these conversations.
I mean,
If we said this,
If-
how would that look from your side?
if we get a tentative draft, I know people that I can send it to be like, if you saw this and you were.
The former chair
Board
of
for
this
developers,
board
so-
was a developer, I can't think of his name. He was very knowledgeable, not that great a board chair, but very, very knowledgeable on
Don't put that on.
this development.
Have you seen some of the places he's done?
No.
He's there, it's much more than Nashua,
Yeah.
8 stories, 100 units in one block.
Uh,
But but he's knowledgeable about that, absolutely.
Do you remember his name?
Art Rose.
Art Rose.
He moved.
Oh.
So
What you were talking about with, incentive to 2 houses ADA compliant, what's to stop a developer from doing what Logan suggested, which is delaying those 2 and never building them?
That's,
Why would that be any different in any of these schemes we're talking about?
So the main thing post subdivision that incentivizes them to finish the project is taxes. And once you affect the subdivision, there is a lot of record and the value of that lot goes up because it is a separate buildable lot. It doesn't go up to the full amount of having a structure, but there is a recurring payment to the town that incentivizes people to sell it, and to sell it, they have to sell it to someone who can build. And if it's subject to, you can build a 1,400 square foot house, someone is gonna say,
Me.
eventually the price goes down, I'll take that lot, I will build a 1,400 square foot house.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you sell it to me for $50, I'll build a 1,400 square foot one.
That'll just get 2 by 12.
There was a 80 acre lot in Northwood that was for sale for less than 50,000 somewhat recently, but it had no frontage on any road, it was fully locked, so you'd have to find some neighbor who wasn't gonna absolutely destroy you on the price of an easement to get to the center.
I hope you had an old skidder road that went through that I found from a deed 80 years ago.
250 years ago.
Yeah.
Alright,
My piece of land was like that.
Well,
That's a horse
Greg, is
skin
there-
road, that
yeah.
whole-
One, currently our ordinance, the cluster says no frontage requirement and no minimum lot size. I'm thinking this can create a lot of problems for people people who wanna live in Canterbury, I feel, want to have plant some tomatoes and they wanna barbecue in the backyard. And if there's no minimum lot size, your barbecue smoke is going in your neighbor's yard or a neighbor's window. And I'm not, so I think maybe we should think about that.
But in a
Yeah.
well-planned cluster, there might be like shared space in which people could do things like, for instance, garden or barbecue.
I mean, we could require as a baseline condition to even get a cluster subdivision that you have 25% open space. That, all of the people in that cluster subdivision have the ability to access.
Right,
That
so
could be like
it's for amenities for the residents, it's not the open space to qualify, but it's
Well, no, I mean, it could be if you have more open space, you get an incentive, but like just as a baseline period, if you're gonna not have a traditional subdivision, you're gonna get the benefits. You're clustering, which means you should have at least some amount of acreage that can be open. Like that could be,
the way it is now, it is supposed to be undisturbed. And that means they can't put a basketball hoop in it, and they can't plant a garden in it without going to the planning board and the conservation commission.
No, there's allowances for both undisturbed and shared open space.
I thought we had made the
We've
open
definitely
space,
talked
you
about
could have a playground, you could have a garden, you could have all those sorts of things.
Some, yeah,
Well,
like-
only with permission from the planning board and the conservation commission is what
alright, so I'll
No,
just make a note to look at
disturbable
undisturbed
and-
versus recreation versus garden, etc. So we'll.
I think honestly, I think it would be great for us to encourage more shared,
I agree, I'm not,
usable, like as opposed to, like, I love the undisturbed open space and I think we should still have that, but I think that, having this regulation also encourage some like community space more than it currently does would be good.
That's number 3,
Oh,
which I got a big list from Greg, so I
oh,
was like, you're going right.
I haven't seen
right.
Greg's
I'm gonna
list.
add some.
Which was, and this one probably ends up being a little bit more discretionary when an applicant comes, cause community features can differ, but sidewalks, community gardens, playgrounds, fields or courts for sports, public trails, bike path. We can sort of have a non-exhaustive list that we say that you get this bonus if you design the cluster neighborhood to have community elements that bring the units together, such as, and list out these, and make that one a little bit more discretionary, cause you don't want them to be like, we got a sidewalk, give us the total bonus.
I really wanted these guys to put in a goddamn playground or something at this latest one.
right,
Take that really long bus type thing and just, it is the playground.
Something.
So I know maybe this might be a throwback, but what about energy efficiency? I know most people, when they build the house, they just make it face the road. And if it's an east, if it's a north and south road, your roofs are gonna face east and west. And that's not good for solar, and it's not good for passive solar gain. And so, I think in the energy codes, there's some mention of these sorts of things, but no one seems like they've talked about it in like 30 or 40 years.
I've thought about that too, but I'm wondering how is that enforceable and, so everybody's gonna have a solar panel, but do you have to maintain that, or?
No, but
There's green standards
It's-
for construction, right?
Yeah,
hard to send them, but I get the point that if you have at least one of your roof slopes that is southerly facing,
Yeah.
you at least, without dormers, you at least have the possibility of putting on solar.
But passive solar too, our house is, solar south, and there's days in the middle of the winter, we don't heat it, because you don't have to.
What's passive solar? How's
Passive
that different?
solar.
What is
the
passive solar?
the sun hitting your house
The
makes it
sun going in
Oh,
the
oh,
south and overhangs.
Oh, I guess I do have that.
You probably
But
do have
not,
that,
not
you
a
just
whole
don't.
lot, the barn blocks. the
You
whole
only
south.
hear about this if you live in houses like Joshua's and mine, where that's like a big thing, like I also have a house that does a lot of.
The side of the
passive
house that
solar.
you have to repaint every 2 years instead of 4.
My house isn't painted, but yeah, the south side's clapboards do look like absolute trash, and I should probably have new siding put on, does anyone know about it? I need to go.
But passive solar also often takes into account overhangs so that you don't get the summer sun
Right, but they're all totally dependent on insulation.
and
Yeah.
insulation. Alright, come and look
So,
at my
I mean,
house
there are
someday.
definitely some like environmental standards for housing and I think it's not unreasonable to suggest that we consider putting in like the potential for some bonuses if people like, you know,
Maybe we
are
can
going to
reference-
design and build to, you
Is
know,
there,
name your like reasonable environmental standard, like somebody's made a list of these things.
Right, we can just
So
reference
you're
them
not
to some,
aware of one right now though, but you think.
I
I don't,
know
yeah, I
that
don't like have the
buying-
name of what, like, I don't, yeah, I don't have
Is
the name
there
of one of
a-
these things
I
right
know
off the
that-
top
I
of
know
my head, but they
energy
absolutely do
efficiency
exist.
standards.
Building code standards, something or other.
There's a lot of like current building code that makes houses extremely energy efficient, like to the
Yeah.
point where it's not cost prohibitive.
so, I'm just referencing one of
Yeah.
these standards.
It's not a
like-
mistake there.
Yeah, and it would increase the value of the homes probably as well, like it might cost a little bit more to build, but it would also probably allow them to, you know, make slightly more money off of them when they sell them.
But walking backwards from that one, general sense on community features and encouraging them designing it so that the cluster has an actual
Yeah.
community and shared space.
Yes,
Alright. The next one on my list was architectural styles, which I've always, I don't know if frustrated is the right word. It feels so hard to enforce and to understand architectural styles in the sense of requiring it, and in a way where you also get variation and you don't have everything end up getting approved and looking identical.
Well, I think we should just
The-
look at what they got in Nantucket, cause they're very successful, making them all
So-
look the same.
Some towns that have architectural standards will put example photos in their ordinance
Which
and
is
get
what we did.
like an exemplary style and list them out. Others, you name them and you kinda hope it, but I feel like my idea of what a colonial or a cape is usually very different than what a developer's idea of a colonial or a cape or a ranch.
Vinyl,
you know,
vinyl, 24 by 36 vinyl.
I'm not sure that I care if, like, people who are building a cluster development, build a cluster development where all of the houses look like they're from 200 years ago. Like, I don't know that I care about that.
And I think
Neither.
when it's come up before, the issue is not, at least my recollection, the issue is less about whether they look like a point in time, but whether you build 20 homes that all look the same and whether that bugs some people.
It probably does bug some people.
I make fun of my littlest brother's house because it's essentially a rectangle with no overhangs or bay windows or any feature whatsoever in the minimum amount of windows, and I find it to be the most boring thing. But I see tons of new construction where they don't do that, and even the one on Northwest.
But if
Road
they
has
want,
got-
if someone wants to make a bunch of, candy colored, round houses, that's just, I
Go
think,
nuts.
wrong with you, it's not my business.
Well, that's the question, is how much do we care, if at all? And if it's just you're encouraged to do X, we could do that and not tie it to anything, or give them anything. If we care more, it can be, some small amount, which is if you, or I guess we could have
I
we could have a
would like-
don't do this list.
I would like them
just-
to,
yeah.
build houses that are like, aesthetically not reprehensible, but also I don't care if they look, traditional. I think if somebody wanted to build a whole development of like, really modern looking homes, go nuts, like, you think you can sell those? Sure. But like,
But we have districts, we have historic districts, we
sure,
have the
I'm saying,
center
no, it's
historic
obviously,
district.
I'm not talking about the historic district is what the historic district is, but like, if you're, if you're building on West Road, which is the commercial district, if you wanna build those all in like concrete and glass and people will buy them, sure, why not?
Alright,
I don't think aesthetics are necessarily a driving factor.
low to no priority, low to no
Yeah.
priority, other sense?
No, I'm good with what people are buying, it's like, if that's what they want.
Yeah, I feel like the
White vinyl,
market
black
is gonna
windows.
drive a lot of aesthetic choices anyways, like, I mean, it's not that I don't care what they look like, it's just like, I can't imagine any way of like outlining, what they should look like, that's not
So on that,
Well,
as
when
a
we were
separate,
talking to Meridian, it's like, it seemed like, I'm not sure this is what's gonna actually happen, but it seemed like what they wanted to do was put a big 3-car garage in the front and a little house behind it. And that's just ugly. Maybe we don't care.
I mean, you think
You know,
it's
that's-
ugly, but you're not buying the house either, so like, I mean, if that's what people want, whatever. Who cares?
But it's not gonna look like the spruces if you do that.
No, but nothing's
But I mean, the
gonna look like
spruces doesn't look like
1970,
anywhere else in Canterbury
you know.
anyways, like, and who cares, like,
Okay, so we can maybe flag it as something that when we get to the point of having the public hearing, we can see if there's people who feel particularly
if people
strongly.
do care.
It's probably not gonna be a sense of the whole town if we get that anyway.
I guess,
Does anyone remember if in the master plan, if there was a part about architectural styles in any of the questionnaires that they sent out in
I don't think
19,
that there
2020?
was.
I wasn't here.
I have a pretty good memory for that sort of stuff, and I also spent like way
Okay.
too much time listening to conversations about the master plan. I don't recall that being a major area of
I
consideration.
think the only thing that really piqued people's interest was like the Canterbury Hall styling, you know, the old farmhouse look,
Yeah.
but it wasn't,
Oh, I think people particularly like the idea of like, instead of tearing down places like that we renovate them into something that works for the modern world.
Or if it's a multi-family, big house, little house, back house, barn,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And that really, that's like a
I
really
guess I
good way
care
to
more
build
about like
multi.
the aesthetics of situations like that where, you're like plopping a small number of units into like the middle of like what is otherwise a single family, single lot kind of residential area versus something where people are developing 20 houses at the same time in a neighborhood.
Okay.
Like if those don't match what the rest of Canterbury looks like.
So,
I guess I'm also thinking of, like, I went to Smith College, and Smith College, like, the architectural styling is that every building there is built in the style of the time that it was built, which means that nothing there looks alike. But also, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, every building is of its time, which means, like, the building that I lived in while I was there is built in 1873 and looks it. And like the campus center that I went in a couple of years before I started was built in like, I don't know, 2000 or something, and it looks it, it's all concrete and glass. I'm like, it's fine, there's nothing wrong with that.
Victorians only. Second related architectural question. 6.4A, as currently written, talks about permitted uses in a residential cluster neighborhood are residential dwelling units with not more than 6 units in any structure. I wasn't here when this portion went, or I don't remember that piece. Was there a lot of talk at that point? Was that something that sort of came in the template that you guys were working off of with like New Hampshire? Like, maybe just, I'll back up another question. Do we actually want to encourage multi-unit buildings?
I think that again comes out of the idea of when we've got these big sprawling farm properties, the hope of renovating them into multiple units instead of tearing them down.
I think that also went back to the Canterbury Hall kind of
Yeah.
thing where which has at least six units in it, doesn't it?
At least,
more than that.
Well,
Is-
part of it is communal living, or, well, I don't know what
Yeah,
it is now,
was,
but part of it was communal living, and there were definitely 3 totally separate apartments.
Is that maybe something better addressed through the table of uses where if you allow a certain number of, or some people, there's like some towns that have ordinances that specifically relate to commercial properties that if you wanna take them and convert them into residential use, they deal with that, but something that addresses if you're allowed to have multifamily in a particular place, then you can convert any structure you want. Or if it's conversion, we're talking about that you put it in historic, which is if you're gonna, maybe one way of preserving historic buildings is conversion or something like that, but as opposed to, as written, I think someone could come and say, I want my cluster to be 3
All in one.
large apartment buildings
3 6-unit buildings,
with
yes.
6 units.
do we have a problem with that?
Well, that's the question, that's sort of as we
Well,
try
I mean,
through, and if
also consider that
that's
we do
related
have a
to
height
architectural
ordinance that-
style and is
I don't have
that
a problem.
Canterbury versus, if they did it along exit, or even exit 18, probably not the biggest deal for most people, cause it's kind of a distinct area of town.
Well,
If they did
commercial
it
is-
right on the edge of the historic district and put in 3 buildings with 6 units, I tend to bet that most people would not.
would not be.
Well, if you go up Shaker Road after, north of Canterbury into, I think it's Belmont, there are I don't know, it seems like 4 or 5 multi-family buildings. And I haven't counted, but my guess is that they're 4 units, not 6. But if they were a little bit longer, that probably wouldn't matter very much. And one of them's built in a sand pit, looks terrible, but a couple of them are perfectly attractive. They
So-
look like,
Yeah, you're probably not gonna get that in Canterbury as our ordinance is written, just because they'd have to take what could be 6 houses and put them into one.
Yeah.
And so they wouldn't make as much money. And I think in a lot of the towns that get those, it's they have one lot and they're not subdividing. The use of the lot is multifamily and they put the building. But when I read through, this stood out to me because I'm not sure how purposeful it was and whether it's something that we want, or we wanna find a way to make it actually work, or we wanna remove. Just to make it clear, if it
and what does it say now?
says permitted uses in a residential cluster neighborhood are residential dwelling units with not more than 6 units in any structure. And then it
I
talks
think,
about
my
limited.
recollection of talking about that was like pretty much what I just said on those buildings in Belmont. And that was gonna be okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, they could, what I'm saying at a practical level, I don't think anyone builds a 6-unit apartment building when they have the option to build 6 single-family homes.
Yeah.
And if our baseline density is units, and then this just
But
says
they're
you
much
put 6
cheaper to
units
build, you know.
in one structure, yeah, but I mean,
We don't make
And
as
the
much
cost
money
of
on
building
them,
with the fire
and
code
you probably have
and
to rent them
bullshit.
out.
The
So,
Meridian was.
I do think that
Duplexes, right?
section was put there with
Duplex
some thought and
or some.
intention, and I think that primarily the thought and intention behind it is to allow for those like conversions of a large farm property into a multi-unit
Yeah,
situation. I
right.
don't think anyone's particularly expecting people to build 6-unit buildings in Canterbury, like I mean, we have like a 40-foot height ordinance, so like you're kind of limited on how you can build those buildings. I don't think it's super practical to build things
right,
that way.
and
For 15 minutes, there was a proposal right up here, I think somewhere just outside of the historic district, maybe somewhere behind the municipal building, but one of Booth's, on a piece of land or something, to build a 2 4-unit buildings. And I remember hearing about that.
I don't remember.
I never saw anything,
No, I don't think there's any
Uh,
C, I think it was scuttlebutt. You heard that too?
alright.
I know I came in late, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt your train of thought, but just to put my vote in on, probably not shocking to anybody, whether or not I care about aesthetics, I do. So, that's my brief 2 cents on that, I do think it's important.
And what's the content of the aesthetics that you care about?
I think that's for a larger discussion that I wanna give thought to, in living in Austin, Texas, and I think I said this when Meridian came, that what they were designing looked quite a bit like that, where all of the sudden, everything being built looked like that because it was the cheapest thing to build. And so, and it just neighborhoods just started turning into this,
snout house,
What'd you call
snout house, what you said, the garage,
That's the name for it.
is that what it's called? So looking longer term, in the short term, it's like, okay, what's the harm if one cluster looks like that? But what happens when we get 6? What happens when we get, everything starts to look monotonous is what
We also
happened in
don't have
this.
that many places where this is feasible to do.
I mean, ultimately, you're gonna get what the building trend is at the time, like right now, it's multifamilies. People wanna throw in multifamilies because it's the most bang for your buck and you get the most return on investment. And they'd rather be landlords than sell them.
it? And what's multifamily, is that how many?
Two families or
Two.
more.
So, but
you know, in a lot of
what are
places-
they building, not what are they, right?
36 by 48, 2 families,
So duplexes, so that's what the market likes right now is
because
duplexes.
cost, affordability for concrete and everything, I mean, everything is through the roof.
I
So
mean,
does
honestly,
it-
perhaps the world could probably use more duplexes. It's a great blended
Are
family kind of-
people interested in 3 or 4, or is it tends to be 2?
Depends on the towns and what the style, like I work a lot south of here, and a lot of them are 2-family, that same size, and they blend in relatively well with the town, but you can tell, obviously, like every town, when the build outs were and when houses came.
There's a lot of duplexes in Concord, they're all over the place.
And they're not stylistically bad, obviously, you know, they're probably gonna be your white vinyl, everything the same, you know, asphalt roof, but in the higher end ones, there are nicer finishes, you know, eyebrows, that kind of stuff, depending how you wanna finish them. But again, that's up to the developer, all we can really control is how many you get, how much we allow, and what will give you extra if you make them nicer.
Right, and so that's the question, though, is do we wanna give an incentive that's tied to architectural styles? If there's a way that we can do it that A is going to still have diversity, and I have always kind of struggled to like,
Who chooses, yeah.
to find the way to actually define that where you end up being just so restrictive that nothing
Well, yeah,
happens.
'cause
So-
it's
Greek revival.
Like I said, like, it's not that I don't care about aesthetics, it's just that like, I don't feel like we should or need to be in the business of like dictating a specific style and like.
And the flip side of that too is if it's only a bonus and it's a smaller bonus, there are developers who will just say no to the bonus.
And do whatever
If the
they wanna
style
do
dictates,
anyways, right?
Which
Like,
is maybe fine, and then you still have your diversity, but if a few opt in, you end up with slightly more a certain way, I mean, that's,
a lot of our control here is
it's all,
illusory.
all carrot.
I mean, like, I think of like base housing, base housing is the same for model houses, except they alternate the siding pattern on the houses. So you might get
Ours is
3 that are
starkly
green,
doing
one
that.
that's gray, one that's white, but it's the same damn house with just different vinyl siding. You know, a lot of these clusters end up doing that, or they'll use shakes instead of clap, or, you know,
Yeah.
to break
You
it
go
up.
through those suburbs, you know, outside of Washington DC, and there's 3 model houses, and I don't know if those clapboards are different, but, you know, you see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, 1, 2, 3, you know, one's a
'Cause it's
split
what's
level,
easy to
one's
do. I just keep hearing the theme song to Weeds in my head.
yeah, like weeds.
Little boxes
So-
on the hillside.
Totally separate, and I'm just gonna float it before I completely forget. I think I heard that there are some towns that there's like your detached ADU architectural plans, like the town has 3 plans that anyone can use that are sort of publicly available, so that they don't have to
That's
spend
fine.
on
Yes, that's true.
architect or design work. And anyone who wants to have their
Open source
990
ADU
foot
plans.
ADU, you just, pick one
I
of
love
3
that.
and go.
Where is this?
I don't remember,
Dover, I think, is one of them. It's a,
Oh, so Dover or whatever has like a model to have
they have
1,000 foot ADU.
pre-approved plans.
and they sort of fast track because they know the plan
Oh,
works and the person doesn't have to
complies.
pay for a plan,
And
so
it
it's sort of
complies,
a win-win for
That's
getting
such a
cheaper
good idea, I
ADUs.
love that.
Good idea.
So
That's a good
I wanted to
idea.
say that before I forgot, cause we should circle back to that at some
Yeah.
point.
But wasn't it Dover that put in the small developments for their workforce housing too? Wasn't that them? Who put in it was a small
Sounds like it would be.
subdivision, it was like 1,200 square foot houses, 1,400 square foot houses to promote the young kids. It was all within like biking and like commuting to town.
Did they all
I mean,
get
that sounds
bought
like a
by
thing
somebody
Dover would
else?
do.
I don't know, but I wanna say it was like a year or 2 ago and it was like
It might be.
revolutionary, everybody was buying into it, and I don't know where it went from that.
And do they
So that
exist?
brings us back to
I
the
mean, they're on
walkable
the ground
community
built.
thing.
Yeah.
Do you know
What
where?
does that mean?
I think it's Dover.
But I mean,
Well,
where?
No.
I think, and I'll try to pull something together, I think that one just has to be more discretionary because you don't exactly know what community will look like on any given parcel. We wanna give some examples, we want it to be somewhat discretionary, so they'll work with us, and then ideally you can sort of pitch ideas at them, and if you want this bonus, add your
Put in a
sidewalk, put a
goddamn
garden
sidewalk.
here, do A, B, and C, and they actually do it, and then we can work with them to get a more community driven plan.
So I think it would fit more with what you have, I think many of us have said about community things that that you're walking to, the sidewalk has gotta go somewhere. And so it should be a playground, there should be the,
I mean, even if it just safely gets kids to their bus stop, like sidewalks are good.
So you'll all sign my petition for sidewalk on Baptist Road.
No. Would you change?
That comes back
Who's
again.
Who's gonna maintain it? But so anyway, the list we had on potential community planning ones are like playgrounds, sports, like fields or courts, sidewalks, public gardens, public trails, bike paths. The other piece that we haven't hit, but public doesn't have to be the development. I mean, if you have enough open space and you open it up to the town public, that all public can walk through trails, that's another thing that we can talk about.
Joshua has often talked about connectivity, that not having the lollipop thing, that there's a way of connecting to another development or something.
And then on that, which is sort of the opposite of connectivity, but one thing that gets talked about in clusters is distance from the public road, and that part of the idea was getting them back a little bit so you don't have everything visible right on the road.
Yeah, but that's not antithetical to connectivity.
Not always,
And
yeah.
I'm thinking about, at least my area of town, there's trails roughly paralleling Shaker Road, I don't know, a third, half a mile to the east. And, you know, when the opioid place moved in, they shut down their portion of that trail. And, you know, you can still walk there, but you know, they don't like it. And that's a problem, you know, because it's part of a bigger trail system. And so you can have the house over the rise, or the cluster of houses over the rise, so you don't see it from the road or whatever. And that's, you know, farther from the main road, but maintain the connectivity of those trails, you know, basically the skidoo trails, you know, that go all over the place. And maybe there should be a bonus for maintaining those existing, or at least not obviating the existing trail networks.
Could you change the incentive for the different zoning district? So for instance, if you're in a commercial zone putting in a cluster, could you get a different incentive as if you're in a rural zone for a cluster? Would that be something?
You mean like legally?
No, but I'm just saying, if you put it in the provisions, hey, we're gonna be tighter on the way something looks in a rural zone. We're a little looser in the commercial, you know, because we want X, Y, and Z. We want stone walls and fences in the rural zone. I don't necessarily care if they put stone walls on exit 18.
Right.
Are there things that you could do to push the look you want in certain zones to incentivize more houses?
I don't see
That
why not,
complies with the
particularly.
Canterbury vision,
Yeah.
you know, makes everybody happy. You know, if on Baptist Hill, say Abberton, that 70-acre parcel potentially gets subdivided to a cluster. The neighbors, I think, would be happier if the housing was more
Right,
in touch with that zone as opposed to what's going in down there.
yeah.
You know, there's a place for everything, and is that, I don't know if it's legal, I don't know if it's possible, I don't know the ins and outs of the changing it for zones, but you know, if heaven forbid, which it probably will one day, agriculture will get opened up when you run out of space to build. If you put these provisions in now, at least you can control the look or the use versus turning it into the Wild West.
Abberton example is a
Well, the Wild
perfect
West
place
would
for
be ridiculous.
connectivity, because,
That's right.
because you've got all the Shaker Village trails, and you've got these different pieces of conservation land that would be excellent to have.
Yeah, do you give them 3 more houses for keeping the trails open?
Or maybe
One or two or something.
allowing public access, which also is something we've talked about at different times, is trails and public access, you gotta have a place for people to park.
Well, not
I
necessarily.
mean, I've ridden my horse through Abberton's land, like, I didn't need a place to park to do that.
Yeah, but
I
you
bring my
live close
bicycle.
by and you
I
have a
live close
horse.
by, well, and that's the thing, but I do live close by and I have a horse, and I'm not the only person who lives close by and has a horse.
One more thing on
Yeah.
on design, I think we should, if we have a goal of helping people age in place, we should heavily incentivize ranches. I know it's not financially feasible for them, but maybe if they're getting more
So-
houses,
We
they'd be
actually
more willing
we
to.
talked about
actually
that a
did
lot,
that.
I think, right
Yeah.
there.
Did I miss that?
Yeah, that's right, I'll catch
Sorry.
up real quick, so that
We were talking about you getting
At the
old.
outset-
Yes, but we've been there.
Yeah,
We-
41 this year.
we
Same
talked
thing.
about two sort of generic all subdivision requirements, one on preservation of existing features like wetlands, rock walls, natural features, one on
Viewscape.
sort of just not unduly burdening the neighborhood based on traffic. One of those sort of more general ones that if you happen to get the sort of super high, even if it's traditional subdivision, you have at least something to work off of. We're gonna look at how we calculate the baseline density, but at least as I see it, the goal is whatever your baseline is, plus all of your incentives, that the ones that should be achievable, get them to about 100% or maybe a little above for like, if they do everything we want. And then in terms of potential bonuses, open space, maybe tiered like X amount for 25%, X amount for 50% open space. Some percent of either single floor homes or certain square footage and under homes that if you get bonus units, and those units are single floor or 1400.
ADA compliant.
Yeah, and
Potentially to look at it, do we want a separate sort of standalone bonus if you make an entire community that's
Yeah,
one size?
definitely.
So that's another option, the community planning bonus. Potentially energy efficiency, but we're gonna look at whether there's sort of a workable concrete standard through, Cal mentioned there might be like a building code, building standard, or some other way that we can do that. And architectural styles, mixed views on that, and related to the open space, whether there's any broader public right to access or use some portion of the open space.
Well, all you have to do is not post it and then it's open for,
Yeah, but we could also have them grant a public right and not be like, it doesn't have to necessarily be like a full conservation like the town owns it, but just a public right to access.
but as long as you don't post it, then there's no liability, and if you, as long as it's not posted, it's open.
It's not posted until it's posted.
Well, I mean, but maybe
my
we
land,
should
I can
have
go
an
post it if
incentive
I
for
want
not
to.
posting, that's all it would be.
Can there be something in HOA documents prohibiting, or does it have to be posted?
If you post your land to against trespassing, right, then you posted it. If you take money for accessing it, then you incur liability, right? So as long as you don't post, the public is welcome and you have no liability.
But would they be
That's the
welcome to
natural
say, go use a playground that's there?
playground.
that's an
So
interesting question.
I think
for
you have to,
I don't
I think you have to invite the public for the recreational use, and if you allow the public to use your property to recreate, no matter what it is, and you don't charge them,
Yeah,
you have immunity,
right.
is the way that statute works, but I think you still have to give them permission to come on.
If they're getting a bonus, it
There's a
needs to
different
be-
issue with current use property where I think you can't restrict complete access for some types of
Yeah,
current
if
use.
your property is in current use, you can't entirely restrict it from trespassing, but you can post it against certain specific uses. Like my land is posted for no hunting because it's not safe to hunt near horses. But the signs specifically do allow people to say, walk through the land.
But separate from that question,
However this works.
we could say, if there's a place that people want, like a forest, and we ask them to put in trails and they agree to put in community trails, that they also grant a public right to access those trails. And then it's their property, but the public has a perpetual right to still go use those trails. Like that is an option. I'm not saying we necessarily should do it.
I think the way it's written now, there is an additional bonus given for public access.
Right, that you do this much
You have to
undisturbed open
have-
space, this much, if you also allow the public to access it for recreation,
Exactly.
and that's what I'm kind of saying, is we can look at all three. So anyway, those are all the
Thank you.
different ones that we talked about. I'm gonna try to put some of them together with some basic math so we can kind of play out next time, what do we like or don't like about how they're written, and can we think of examples where someone would be like, screw this and just go do their thing, or are we actually achieving anything?
Well, is there the equation for the starting point of the amount of units? I think that has always been the biggest hangup.
So-
Do we start with land that's not buildable? So subtract your non-buildable from your total acreage and then you get your number? Or is it just flat acreage?
That's in the base, so we can certainly talk about that, and
Okay.
Well, that was the biggest problem with the
That
rating.
seemed to be, yeah.
that's part of it in terms of, do you lay out actual lots where you have to have buildable land in all these different places, and part of the reason I don't like that approach is I feel like when you get a hearing on the cluster, it becomes a super long, worky process where we have to analyze an entire subdivision plan that we're not even going to use just to get our baseline density. to then turn around and analyze the actual plan with the cluster. And I think that takes a lot of time, it's more expensive for applicants.
Good point.
If we keep it simple, just in terms of like, look at acreage, that's your starting point. It's, reduce it and then you can bring it all the way back up to 100 if you do the following things. That's a faster process where any one of us can look at a plan that says it's 28.9 acres,
Are we trying to make it cheap and easy for developers?
Well, we also gotta keep in mind our time and
Well,
town staff's time.
Yes, to some degree, because the alternative is just subdividing.
Right, if they had to do the whole first plan anyway, they could just do the plan.
I think what Calvin brought up is kind of a interesting middle road where it's before you divide by the acreage, you extract the unbuildable, which is basically what we do in some ways, but you can't, like, you gotta have a 5 acre lot, but you can't count the wetland, and you, right? So if you took you extract the unbuildable stuff, and then divide by the acreage. And then you're still avoiding all the frontage issues, all the Canterbury rectangle issues, all of that stuff.
Yeah, and so there's
So it's a kind of a,
part in terms of open space where we loop that in, there's part we can loop in for the baseline. Those are all options we can talk about, so I'm certainly not fixing anything in terms of minimum density. I don't like the idea of a two-step application process with two plans,
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean we can't have them if they're gonna survey and show us where the wetlands are anyway, that we can have them remove a certain amount of acreage, then calculate your base and get it back up.
that seems like an interesting possibility.
Okay.
plus it doesn't waste their time either, trying to fit all those random lots, like exit 18 was easy enough, cause it was flat. But if you take all the lots over on Baptist Hill by, with all the wet, trying to sit there and draw all the buildable spots in there, just say, hey, 11 acres, 7
It's gonna
acres
cost a
of
lot
water.
of money.
Yeah,
But I do think there is the point that they are probably going to do pretty much all that work anyway to figure out which is the best option for them.
But we don't have to sit there and watch them do it.
Right.
I'm also gonna plant the seed that even if they have a lot of wetland and steep slope, if they're preserving 50% as open space, how much do we care if we're getting a giant chunk that ends up being preserved from future development as a result of the subdivision? Do we necessarily care that it has a lot of wetlands?
So what you're thinking is that they have 100 acres and 50 of it is wetlands, and the part they set aside for, to get their bonus is the 50 acres of wetlands, and the only time you can go there is in the middle of the winter, because it's wetlands.
I mean, it's still preserved wetland, I'm just saying, that's maybe an extreme example where the 50% is all wetland, but let's say it's 10 that's wetland.
But Brendan,
And they subtract it, you look at 90, it's slightly fewer units, but if at the end of the day, the town gets sort of 50 acres that is undisturbed. So I'm not saying that I agree with the end point of that, I'm just thinking about it.
you did bring up the point, which is in the ordinance now, that the open area
20%.
cannot be more than 20%
Right.
wetland and unbuildable.
Right, and so we can bump that number up where they still get to count the wetlands towards their density, they can put in units. It's easy to do these projects.
So we could bump it down too.
But yeah, in either direction, but we just control sort of how much open space, how much do we care if the wetlands and more is being preserved? I'm just gonna plant that seed, we'll talk more. I think we've hit most of it. Is there anything else anyone wants to add just in terms of potential conditions with the idea that I'm gonna get
No, the
words
only
on
thing,
paper?
the only thing I thought about was something that we touched on last week, which was the parking situation on these roads. If you're adding a sidewalk, you're taking away space from some additional space, et cetera, but I immediately started to think about like safety. And if there is a possibility for them to have, for instance, even if it's a small off to the backside of the whole development on dirt, it doesn't even have to be asphalt. where overflow parking could go. I mean, I had this vision of like this little kid having a birthday party and a graduation party on in the same cluster. And parking situation, the way it was described to me for the last meeting was they get two cars. One in the garage and one in the driveway.
So that, for that last application, that is what they proposed to us. But I don't think we had any teeth where we could force them to do something differently. And if we had cut their basic density and only given it back if they had community planning that talks about sidewalks, and sidewalks naturally create an area where more people can park that is safe in terms of being able to have pedestrians, they maybe would have ended up with, you know, a smaller unit had to readjust, and we could have, if they wanted all those units, they would have had to readjust so then put in a sidewalk. So that's hopefully what part of this accomplishes.
So related to that, I don't know if anyone who drives by Sherwood Forest during school bus time, there's a line of 10 cars sitting there. And, so I think there should be like a waiting lane for the school cars, and there's some amount of carpooling also that goes on, so, you know, it's nice to think the kids are gonna walk to the bus stop, but they don't. They go and they sit in the car with their parents until the bus comes, and then,
Well, it's kind of vary based on how far they have to walk, like if it's a very, you know, sort of small,
weather.
tight community, well, and, yeah, sure.
But we
and
could
the
just
weather,
build that into the non-exhaustive list of
Yeah.
community planning bonus, where
Yeah.
then they're coming to us and we're able to talk about that as just, you know, in terms of school bus pickup.
the
I'll see what
same
we're
for
thinking.
the mailbox situation at Sherwood
Yeah.
Forest is another nightmare.
Why,
No,
what's
that's
the matter
fine,
with it?
isn't it?
Because there's no, the mail truck is sitting there for half an hour trying to get all the mail into all the boxes.
And that's a problem because.
Well, the school bus is going around and Ed Septic is trying to get his truck with the backhoe in the back of it into his driveway, and everybody's trying to go,
At
get
least
to
in not all
work in the
sensitive
morning.
areas.
I don't know how I mean, what alternative is there to the mail truck sitting there and putting mail in?
A little pull off with a set of mailboxes in a little.
Well, it's all wet behind them, I think.
But that's what you're talking about, is having
Sherwood
some,
Forest has a lot of issues, let's be clear.
Right, so what I'm saying is let's put it in the community planning thing, that there is a way to deal with it.
mailboxes
standard.
and school buses go.
But what if each of these
community
has
features.
just as an individual mailbox? Like, some communities it makes sense to put all the mail in one place and some it's not going to.
This whole discussion told me that I know so little about mail, and I have a brother who's a mailman, who's a rural delivery driver. I feel like maybe I actually owe him some questions.
Yeah.
Like, under what circumstances do you have to actually get out of your car and walk a
Well, the
neighborhood?
USPS is going out of business in a month anyway, so
Right,
there you go.
Yes, society is collapsing, we
Alright,
know.
Well, then it goes from UPS to all the delivery vehicles.
I've got a good list. I'm gonna pull something together where we can actually start seeing how it might look like in practice.
And do I need to go through the stuff that I pulled out of the last
I
meeting?
think I read through it and we hit
I think we
the
did.
key ones. Alright, any other new business or old business or other business? And I don't know the difference between all three. Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
I shall move to adjourn.
Seconded.
Alright, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All distracted.